do this, but how is it you always manage to marry a piano player? Charlene, does that mean you're going to be ordained?
I'm going to try. We're just supposed to keep trying. We'll just see.
She took one lesson. Yeah, no, are you going to be a preacher? Preacher's married to a piano player.
Oh, well, we'll work on that too.
Oh, my. We have been talking about spiritual warfare and the Christian armor. And I'd like to just take a little bit of a review here. We've noted that spiritual warfare, for some reason or another, my throat is husky. I apologize. I don't know why. I was fine until I started singing. So we'll hope it goes away here in a little bit. Spiritual warfare is a fact. We're living in a time where the intellectual elite would like to deny that. The idea of a God and a creator God and things like that are often seen as ignorant, and the idea of a spiritual war is seen as much as superstition, which is precisely what Satan wants, because if you don't know you got an enemy, you're in real trouble. And so if we can deny the fact, it gives him a lot of room to work. The second thing that we need to talk about is what the enemy's weapons are. And our weapons are just the antithesis of that. The first weapon is deception. Of course, we deal with truth. The second weapon that is often used is coercion, making people to do things. The best example that we can see, or one of the best examples, would be like Roe v. Wade, where America had abortion forced on it. It was never given a choice on a thing. Same way with this gay, lesbian bathroom stuff. It's being forced through law. We don't get a choice. There's no public discussion. It's coerced. It's pushed on us. And finally, death. If they can't get us to bend, they'll kill us. And so that's the primary enemy's weapons. Last week we saw that the anchor of our armor, the anchor of our protection, is truth. And we must realize that without truth, we are utterly vulnerable. I have, one of the things that I have found in life, as I've mentioned, I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. I come from a family that on both sides of the family were riddled with alcoholism. Now, if you understand that, if you allow me to use the term disease, that you don't have a sick person, you have a sick family. And the way it goes forward primarily is by denial, which means that you do not acknowledge the truth. You self-deceive. You deceive yourself. And what happens is you open yourself up. And the problem is that even though I was a Christian for a number of years, I did not realize I was self-deceived. And I learned that the only way I can survive is with brutal honesty. I use that term, brutal honesty. We're living in a time where people do not like straightforward talk, and people simply saying the truth in love. We're so politically correct anymore that if you are one who deals in truth and deals with it in a way, you're often seen as unloving or whatever. But I had to learn that I have to be brutally honest, especially with myself, especially with some of the things we're going to talk about today. Otherwise, we become vulnerable to Satan's attack, and we often get ourselves into situations and say, how in the world did I get here? And so we're anchored by truth. Today, we're going to talk about the breastplate of righteousness. So let's take a look at our text and remind ourselves what we're talking about, and then we will move into a discussion of the breastplate of righteousness. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you will be able to stand your ground after you have done everything to stand. Stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all of this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God, and pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. And with this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all of the saints. Pray also for me, that whenever I open my mouth, the words may be given me, so that I will fearlessly make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains. Pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. Well, we always start with the word picture. What is the picture? And we can see that the Roman soldier here, the breastplate is this particular part of armor. It looks something like this. They often had different forms. Notice on this one, it was a layered, more flexible one. This is a solid one. They came in different forms. But the purpose was to protect the vital organs. That is the primary role of the vital organs. And so we ask ourselves the question, well, what is the breastplate of righteousness? What are we doing protecting vital organs with righteousness? Well, first of all, we got just what is righteousness? Righteousness is the character of quality of being right, or just. It's not tough. That's the thing. Too often we take some of these words and make them hard, but righteousness is there. Simply put, it's right actions from right motives. We do the right things for the right reasons. That's there. And what we find is this comes from the heart. And so when you begin to take a look at the breastplate of righteousness, what we're protecting primarily is the heart. A good man, Jesus had this to say, a good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. Beware, your words will betray you. Good people have a lot of good things come out. Bad people, bad things come out. We're back again. Remember the sermon several months ago about diamonds and snakes? The two girls, one had diamonds and flowers come out of her mouth. The other girl had snakes and toads come out of hers. Remember that? That's what Jesus is saying. Okay? Here's probably one, though, that we need to spend some time, not so much we don't understand it, but just expanding on. Above all else, guard your heart, for it is the wellspring of life. Above all else, everything you got there, guard your heart, because it's the wellspring of life. Well, now, what do we mean by a wellspring? A wellspring is the source. We live in an area around here we don't see it so much, But do you remember before we had refrigeration, what we would do is we would dig back into a hill and we would find a cold spring. And the source of that spring would have running water. And not only would we drink it, but that was the source of water, the coolness and things like that. Now what we need to understand is our heart is the source of our life. If you want a good life, you've got to have a good source. If you desire things that are less than noble, you will not have a good life. The source has to do with your heart, with your loves. And so when we begin talking about guarding this, it's easy for our heart to be corrupted. A story is told of in Switzerland, there was a community that had their source of their water came from up on the mountain. And there was a man who lived in that area, and the people paid him to keep the source clear and keep the water running. Well, it came time that there was a bunch of people who were the wizards of smart and decided, why do we need this guy? I mean, all he does is pull a few leaves out now and then or do things like that. Why do we need to have somebody keep the spring clean? So the city council met. They dismissed the man to save the money. The man was fine with that. He just let the spring go. And for about a year, everything was fine. But then all of a sudden, the people began to notice that the water they were getting wasn't clear and pure. It seemed to have kind of a brown cast to it. And it began to pick up some bad taste and an odor. And that was it. And then, especially when they got to the summer, the stream almost stopped. Well, the powers that be decided that they probably better go and check on it. And so they walked up the mountain to the source of the spring, and here it was. The spring was all clogged with leaves and debris and problems with it. So what they did, they cleaned out the well, the spring, the source of the water, and water began flowing again, clean and clear and crystal. And people found out that they had to do things to keep the source clear. And so what we're talking about here with the breastplate of righteousness, we're talking about to guard our heart, we've got to realize that it may seem simple and simplistic in some ways, but if we don't keep that source clean, it's not going to be long until what begins coming out of us is not what we would have us to be. So, the proverb writer says, guard your heart. Guard your heart. Well, let's ask ourselves the question, how does righteousness protect us? Remember what we're talking about here is the Christian armor provides us protection, personal protection against the spiritual warfare, against the satanic attacks personally. How does it protect us? Well, first of all, we have to understand that our heart, and coming from our heart, especially as Christians and people of God, we live by the first and second great commandment. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. And the second is like unto that, love your neighbor as yourself. And so what we find here is that the first thing that by doing righteousness is that we have a heart that our wellspring is love. Everything that comes out of us has a source that is love as Christians. I want you to think about this just a little bit, because we are living in a time where a lot of people want to call themselves being good people, but at best it's a mixed bag. And the problem is that if you are not a committed Christian, if you do not love God first, foremost, head and shoulders above any other person, place, or thing, if you don't have that, you will not operate from love. You'll operate out of self-interest at best, and probably out of outright selfishness at worst. You see, as a natural person, we are self-centered. We are going to do what we feel is best for us, correct? That's what motivates humanity. And with our when we accept Christ as our Savior, we have one of the key things, and part of that miraculous transformation is that we get a new heart. We love things differently. Jeremiah prophesying, Jeremiah 31:34 says, "In that day, I'm going to make a new covenant with my people. I'll no longer write my law on tables of stones," i.e. the Ten Commandments. "I'm going to write my law in their heart and my judgments in their mind." So that when we do it, talk about writing in their heart, well, we're talking about their love. So that we change what we love. And our hearts are transformed altogether. And if we are not operating from a heart of love, we will hurt people. It's just that simple. This thing of the first commandment, the first great commandment, it's really easy, say, oh yeah, we can all quote it, we learned it in Sunday school, we learned it in Bible school, we did all that kind of stuff. But that was intentional, and without that foundation, if that's not our wellspring, if that's not the source of what makes us work, we're going to find that our stream becomes contaminated. We find ourselves being vulnerable to these suggestions and the attacks of the enemy. It begins, our heart begins, that's why we sung, "My heart is fixed on Jesus, the Son of Almighty." That's why we sung that. Because unless it's there, we are going to be vulnerable. And so what's happened as Christians, and we need to understand this, we operate from love. Now, what do we mean by that? I just feel like I need to get down this rabbit trail just a little bit to make myself clear. When we start talking about love and this type of stuff, we are not talking about a special type of feeling. Okay? If you listen to a lot of the love songs and stuff, oh, my heart goes pity-pat and I just feel so good and whatever. And a lot of people get married because this person makes them feel good, and after they don't make them feel good very long, then they think they don't love them anymore. And we have to understand that when God is talking about love, He is talking about a decision that is based on the value we perceive in the object love. Husbands, love your wives. Agape. The same love, the same term is used in John 3:16, where we read, God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, so that whosoever believes in Him might not perish, but have everlasting life. Notice that this love is not what you can do for me or how you make me feel good or whatever. This love is based on value, and it starts off first and foremost as a self-sacrificial love. The second thing about it, the motives of this love have to do with what is best for the relationship. We can understand this easily. Do you love your children? Of course we love your children. Do you spank your children because you want to abuse them? No. Children, when they violate certain rules, when they disrespect authority, they get paddled. my favorite illustration along this line. Kids love to play in the street, right? I don't know about you, but we lived on it wasn't a busy street, but it was and they liked to play in the street. All right, so my son John rides his little tractor out into the street. Now, do I go out to him and I say, now Johnny, you have to understand that force is equal to mass times the acceleration. And you need to understand that a car has much more mass and much more acceleration than you do. And if you would happen to come into contact with that automobile, it'll splatter you all over the grill. Did I do that? Now look, you guys who know John know he's a geek's geek. You know? What'd I do? No, I drag him off the tractor and wham! Hit him on the rear end and said, you don't play in the street.
Can't do that today.
You do if you want to keep your kid alive. Because what happens here is he doesn't understand physics, but he does understand if he goes out in the street and gets a paddling and it hurts, he'll stay out of the street, which hurts a lot less than being hit by an automobile. Why? Why do you do that? Because you're evil, wicked, mean, bad, and nasty? No, I love him. And I love him enough to discipline him with appropriate discipline. Okay? Now, the problem that some people have is that they seem to think that every time a kid does something wrong, they need to smack him. That's wrong. We as parents and grandparents need to learn to make a distinction between childish indiscretion, which needs correction and discipline in other ways, and challenges to authority and dangerous stunts. There's a difference there. But we've got such a bunch of nitties anymore, they can't make that kind of distinction. Okay? But you do it because of love. Now, the point that I'm making here is we are making decisions by love. And if we are Christians, and if we love Jesus Christ with all of our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and we do that, I'm going to treat Bob and John and Muriel and Blair and everyone else in here, I am going to treat you, I'm going to choose to love you and treat you by what is best for our relationship. Right? And you're going to do the same thing. Can I tell you something? You get a bunch of Christians running around town treating people with love. I say, man, you know, I really like that guy. Did you ever notice when you come into his presence, you feel really good. Just guard your heart. Guard your heart. If it doesn't have a source of love, if that is not the source, you are open to tremendous problems. First thing. That's the first thing. Second thing. When you start talking about your heart, you got to talk about right desires. You gotta want the right stuff. See, right desires protect us from foolish and hurtful lust. Paul, writing to Timothy, said, "Those who desire to be wealthy fall into many foolish and hurtful desires." Okay? What's their desire? I want to be wealthy. And you watch people who want to be wealthy, and you will see them buy some of the dumbest things. You'll watch them go to some of the dumbest places. You'll watch them associate with people who are not good for them. Why? Well, they want to be wealthy. Okay? Now, if we have right desires, if what we want is holiness, if what we want is what's best for everyone here, right desires, you begin to think about it. What you desire is what you get. All right? Why don't you think about it? Russ is sitting back here. Russ, wanted a man's garage. Right? He wanted a man's garage. Now, the thing of it is, his man's garage was a little bit more than $1.50. But he got it. Right? It was his desire. There's nothing wrong with that. I simply use the point that what we desire, we get. You desire pornography, you'll get it. You desire your own way, you'll get it. You desire to manipulate and control everybody, you'll get it. Okay? But when we start talking about guarding our heart, we've got to talk about what we want. Oh, by the way, Russ, I want a man's garage too, and I'm saving for it. And you ladies are just shaking your head. But right desires. If you desire the right things, then you don't desire the wrong things. Right? Okay. The Lord put this on my mind with it. The proverb writer says, "Stay with the wife of your youth. Let her breast satisfy you. For why should you let your water run out in the streets?" Okay? Now, you guys fill in the blanks about what that means. But the point is that if your desire is for your wife, if you're eating steak at home, why will you want to go eat bologna outside? It's what you desire. It's what you desire. Right motives. Right motives keep us from saying and doing wrong and hurtful things. And we have to understand that this is really the core of sin. The core of sin is why you do what you do. Okay? That's the core of sin. It has to do with why far more than what. Because the why is what gives birth to the what. Okay? So, if you're working from a heart of love, and you've got good desires, good things are going to come out of this. But if you're self-centered and selfish, and you have evil desires, guess what? Now again, let's come back to what the proverb writer said. He says, above all, guard your heart. Guard your heart. Now what this means is we need to take time to examine why we do what we do. See, too often we just go off and we're off and we do this and we do that. We just assume that our motives are pure and everything's right and good and whatever. But there comes some times that we just need to stop and say, why did I do that? Was that love? Why did I say that to my spouse? Why was I so mean? You need to examine those motives. Why am I a Christian? Whoa. Am I a Christian because I love Jesus? Or am I a Christian because if I made the statement of what I really thought, people would look down on me? Or it's the fashionable thing to do? Or, everybody's a Christian. Perhaps, but maybe not. You see what I mean? When we start talking about this idea of righteousness, we start talking about having the right desires, and we start talking about having the right reasons why we do what we do. And then finally, we talk about right actions. Right actions protect us from the consequences of sin. I will tell you, as a pastor, it is unfortunate, but I often have to deal with people who did sinful things and all hell broke loose in their lives, and they want me to pray that God will somehow stop it. Let me give you a hint. You can't sow wild oats and then pray for crop failure. Actions have a problem. You see, sin takes you further than you want to go. Keeps you longer than you want to stay. And it costs you more than you want to pay. Are we beginning to see how this breastplate's starting to work and protect us? Huh? It's starting to make some sense, isn't it? Paul knew what he was talking about. Let's land. We need, one of the things we begin talking about this, we need to reflect just a little bit on where and how does Satan attack. First of all, Satan's attacks are through trials and temptations. Okay? When you do this. Now, we need to understand that there is no sin in being tempted. The truth is that as long as you are in this flesh, you will be tempted. James makes it very clear that every person is tempted when they're drawn away by their strong desires and enticed. Okay? And we need to understand that Satan knows your weaknesses, he knows my weaknesses, and he knows what will entice us. One of the things that I find interesting in the story of the fall is that the serpent is known as the shining one. He's the glistening one, if you get in and look at the language. Sin always looks better than it is. Satan has a way of making promises that will not come true. It glitters. It gleams. It looks like it's going to be so much fun. It looks like there will be a great payoff. It looks like there will be no ill consequences. It is like that, and we are tempted. Okay? Now, I don't care whether you're a preacher or a baby Christian. That's the way it works. And yes, preachers do have their temptations. As long as we're in the flesh, we're going to have that. The difference is that when we know God's law, we understand that that glitter is an illusion, for one, and that the consequences are far worse than we can ever anticipate. Okay? I don't know how many people I have counseled who have had an affair and then had horrible, horrible consequences. But they thought at first, well, it was just a one-night stand. And the consequences and the fallout just explode across families. Okay? Temptation. Okay? Satan is going to try to do it. Now look, you need to understand, say, well, it won't, nothing will tempt me. You've got your temptations. It may be money. It may be sex. It may be power. It may be anything. You have your temptations. You need to be aware of your weaknesses.
Amen.
Why? Well, because that's probably where Satan's going to go. He will get you when you are tired and least expecting it. And the next thing you know is you've done something really dumb. Okay? So first of all, temptations. The other thing, I use temptations and trials together. Go to Job. Job was tried, and in his trial was a temptation. Okay? Trials are the bad things that come into our lives. It happens. They happen. Okay? Trials and temptations. They come along. And just like Job, you're going to be tempted to curse God. Why is God doing it? I've been a Christian for 30 years, and now I've got this kind of stuff. The answer is it's your turn. Satan's trying to attack you. The question is, are you going to survive it? How are you going to be protected? You just need to understand, number one, you're going to be tempted and you're going to be tried. At some point, I have never done it here, but I will talk to you about a people that are tested and tried and how that will come forth as gold. Okay? They're meant to purify us. Our trials and temptations are meant to purify us. But for right now, trials and temptations, Satan's going to work that area. Pay attention to it. Second thing, he's going to try and destroy your reputation. This presidential campaign has amazed me. But the lies that are being told, and the whole point is to hurt the other person's reputation. Okay? Now I can tell you, that's one of the reasons as a pastor, I have to be careful about some things. Oh, Pastor, you don't have any enemies. You want to bet? I got some people who do not like me. And I have had people, literally, I have had people go into restaurants and at the top of their voice proclaim what an evil man I was to influence a lot of people. That happened to you, Pastor John? More than once. Now, I get it primarily because I'm a public figure. But please understand something. Satan wants to destroy your reputation. Satan wants to destroy what people think of you. Now, I realize that character is what you are and reputation is what people think of you. But I will also tell you that if you don't have a good reputation, you are not going to be able to be effective in winning souls for Christ. Okay? Just that simple. Okay? He's going to attack your family. Mark it down. It comes to Christian families. Satan will do things to try and destroy your family, to try and destroy your relationships. He's going to go in there. He's going to go after the most vulnerable people, and he's going to try and do it to make walls and things between the people of your family. Mark it down. Well, why would he want to do that, Pastor John? Well, number one, Satan knows that in order to defeat Christ, he has to destroy the Christian family. Mark that down. But the second thing is, he may not have you, but he'll bring trials and things on you so that all you have to do is just shut up. And if he can bring enough hurt into your life that you will simply sit back and shut up, read your Bible, live your life to yourself, and do all that, and not have any influence in a community or bringing people to Christ or influencing your kids or doing any of that kind of stuff, if he can just get you to shut up, that's why he's attacking you. Okay? Fourthly, your church. You need to understand that Satan despises what we have here. We really like one another. In fact, more than that, we really love one another. We do. We care a lot, and whatever. And the truth is that when people come in, one of the first things, they come to the fish fry, and they notice, wow, these people really love one another. Imagine that, a church where the people love one another, Well, there's something new. Okay, well, now the fact that we can make a joke about that, and the fact that there is so much discord in our churches across this area, does that tell you anything? And so I can tell you, Satan will try and bring misunderstandings. Satan will try and bring frustrations. Satan will try and take advantage of the mistakes that we make with one another. He's going to try and do that. What's he want to do? He wants to destroy the love and the unity that we have. Because as long as we have the love and the unity, he can't stop us from doing what the Lord has called us to do to revive this community.
Amen.
Okay? But mark it down. This congregation has a target on it. And every one of you have a target. You say, well, I'm not important in the church or anything like that. Listen, Paul said a little bit of yeast leavens the whole loaf of bread. It only takes one. Okay? Did you see what's it? Oh, wow. Now does it make sense why you got to guard your heart? Did it now why it makes sense you got to have the breastplate of righteousness? Huh? Does it make sense now? Paul, and that's a neat scripture to memorize and all those kind of things. But when we start talking about it in these terms, as I told you, when I started this series, I'm not talking about giving you any knowledge. I haven't said anything here today that you folks don't already know and have heard it a zillion times before. But it's the awareness that we've got to come up. We've got to be aware of what's going on. And as the Scripture teaches us, we've got to be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. But you've got to know what's going on, and you've got to be aware of what's happening. So, let's land. Your personal protection begins with truth working together with righteousness to beat the enemy. Wow. Isn't that cool? I just think it's cool, Doesn't take much to impress me, I guess, but we're thankful for it. Folks, this is real. And I'm hoping that as we work through this series, you're beginning to see, become aware of what's going on, and beginning to aware of these attacks that will come into your life, and beginning to understand what's going on, so that you aren't caught by surprise, but that you are living that, and you are not ignorant of Satan's devices. Okay? Let us pray.